coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios. This is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. I want to thank you for joining us here online. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get started. You know, it gets me thinking about sort of felons and voting, and it seems to be sort of the hot topic right now in the news feeds. Well, you know what? That's what I'm thinking about right now in the political scene. Well, folks, if you had a chance to watch the town halls on Monday night on CNN, one of the town halls involved Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who subsequently is running for president. And a question from one of the audience participants asked the senator how he felt about felons voting in any sort of election, specifically inmates that are currently incarcerated. Now, to the senator's credit, he was very transparent in his answer, but it sort of made me wonder if whether or not this is a policy or even a platform that he and other Democrats want to embrace. Even here in New Jersey, State Senator Cunningham from the 31st Legislative District has introduced a bill, along with State Senator Ronald Rice, to sort of try to implement this very same measure. Now, the idea of felons, and specifically violent felons that are currently incarcerated, having the access to vote, well, quite frankly, folks, this is lunacy. And while I'm all for rehabilitation and certainly the reentry of many inmates as they try to transition back into society, listen, that's a fair argument to have. But the idea of violent offenders and even the terrorist bomber during the Boston Marathon was cited during the conversation. And again, to his credit, he was transparent. Senator Sanders said, yes, I believe him and any violent offender should still have the right to vote. And folks, I think this is what sort of turns off people, at least throughout all realms of the political spectrum. Listen, I get it. We can have an honest conversation about voting rights and even the rights for former felons. But the idea that we want to sort of embolden those that are currently incarcerated, specifically violent offenders, to still have the right to vote, I mean, quite frankly, do murder victims have the right to vote? They don't. And since they don't, well, should their murderers have them? I don't think so. And I think this is one of the challenges that many policymakers have. Now, whether it's at the national level with U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders or even state senator here in New Jersey, Senator Cunningham, I think this is one of the fundamental challenges that I think that they face right now from the public. Again, I'm all for rehabilitation. I'm all for at least, felons getting the right to vote back after they pay their debt to society, after they're showing that they're productive and being amicable to the system that they once violated. But the idea of giving violent offenders the right to vote, I'm sorry, that's something that a lot of Americans probably won't get behind. And if you're wondering why so many people are probably becoming more conservative today, what's the fact that even liberal policies like this are getting the light of day. I don't know about you, but it might be something that turns off a lot of Americans at the ballot box coming up in November of 2020, and even for elections to come. And that's what I'm thinking about right here in the political scene. Well, folks, in the most recent edition of Talking to Hudson, I had the pleasure of welcoming the chairwoman of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, Amy DeGise. And since her historic win last June, she has set the political scene on fire, not just in Hudson County, but statewide. During the interview, she had a lot to say about even some local and statewide issues. But first off, we start off with her opinions about the municipal race in West New York, specifically West New York Mayor Felix Roque, and whether or not he's even being receptive to media and even taking questions from media personalities like myself. Let's check out what she had to say.
And people that want to talk to me. But it just seems that in West New York, it just seems like the mayor, and I don't think it's him, because I know, he's a gentleman with me. I don't think it's the mayor, but sometimes it's frustrating to deal with campaign people, right? Because it's like if there are too many chefs in the kitchen, it seems like maybe something gets lost. And do you get that sense from people you talk to?
Yeah, absolutely. And I won't name the Hudson County reporter who was talking to me that had a similar story and said, I was invited to an engagement that he was going to be at. I told him, just wanted to ask him a few questions. I, was willing to even just, like you said, just give you the topics. It was really just kind of on campaign platforms and, just some things that are going around in West New York with nothing like gotcha journalism. And then he receives a phone call a few hours before just saying, hey, we're no longer hosting this event. We'll keep you, in the loop for future things. And he felt kind of offended. And I don't blame that. You need to take difficult questions, or you just need to take questions. It doesn't mean that they're difficult because you're being questioned. And I think anyone who is in a position of power, anyone who's going to be responsible for spending tax money, quality of life, they should be open to open forums, and that's why you see these progressive groups demanding town halls and open panels. because they want to have a flow of question and answer, and it shouldn't be seen as like a me against you, or I'm going to like catch you in a lie. Nobody's like that here. Like you said, like we deal with people around here with respect. You know him on sort of a personal level where he knows that, you know, you're coming from a friendly, good place, and that you're a true professional at your job. So I think that, you know, because I get advice and I have mentors in my life, and there are times that I say, you know, well, I see where you're coming from, but I disagree, and I'm going to do this on my own, because you have to take those risks. You can't always listen to what someone is telling you to do, because then they should be the mayor. They should be the ones in charge. So I do think that he really should, you know, kind of prove himself that he does want to respond to questions that the community have. Like I said, campaigning with the New Beginning scheme, I've seen them face questions, you know, from people, and they would never give a, you know, a little politic, you know, type answer like, oh, let me get back to you, or, oh, we're putting our best men on the job. You know, they answer them directly. You know, I've seen them say like, hey, I apologize, you know, that this policy has affected you. You know, I would love to hear more. You know, let's talk about this. And you could see people agree. You could see people agree to disagree. But you have to face those tough questions. So when you and I saw that article by Al where he mentioned that he wouldn't come on the show, and I'm going like, wow, what a loss, because now you not coming on the show is going to give the illusion that you have something to hide, or that you're not going to be prepared to answer, you know, things that are going on in your own community. Like, you should care enough about your job and your community to be able to answer questions, and to know that, you know, hey, if you don't know the answer to a question, you say, you know what, that's a really good question. Can I get back to you in a week with that? Like, I don't have an answer for you right now. And nobody's going to nail him to the cross for saying something like that. So I think of a man of his, you know, of his intelligence and his position, he should be a little bit braver right now and you know, answer the questions. To be honest, I think it's more helpful to the New Beginnings team that he's not doing that. So I don't want to give him any advice and try and help him out at this point.
Sure.
But
now, without a doubt, Amy certainly has her reservations about West New York Mayor Felix Roque, and clearly she is staunchly behind the New Beginnings West New York ticket. But it sort of says more about whether or not Mayor Roque is willing to take any sort of interviews. Now, I've reached out to his campaign team. I'm still waiting for an interview, but hopefully we'll get something accomplished before May 14th. Whether or not we actually reach a deal remains to be seen, but certainly I know Amy had her reservations, and even so do I. Even after talking about West New York, we transitioned into North Bergen, where also there's a very hotly contested municipal race between North Bergen Mayor and State Senator Nicholas Sacco and his very fiery challenger, Larry Weinstein. Amy, of course, backing the incumbent, Mayor Sacco, had a lot to say about her support for the mayor and certainly what she thinks of the opposition. Let's hear what she had to say.
Is perhaps going to cruise to a victory. You don't ever like to sort of take things for granted. You know, obviously, you know, you have to go to the polls and vote, but it seems like the word on the street from people that I talk to say to me that, you know, the mayor and state senator seems to be sort of outworking his challenger. Do you hear that same sort of buzz on the street?
Yeah, I hear it and I see it. You know, I mean, Senator Sacco's in the best shape of his life. You know, he will outwalk anyone, and he is the last man to tire on that trail. And I really think that he's loving it, because people tell him that, like, you got this, like, you know, you're going to win hands down. And he is really enjoying being out there and walking his blocks every night, doing his routine, talking to people. He notes down when people aren't available or aren't home, because he wants to make sure he could circle back. You know, and I really do appreciate that style of him. And, you know, me coming from like a new wave of organizing and politicking, his traditional veteran strategy of that door-to-door ground game is unmatched. And for younger politicians such as myself, I've learned so much from that, you know, just kind of personable. And I do think that, you know, in the beginning he was, you know, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to crush them and everything. But he goes out there and he's able to kind of talk about the things that he's dedicated himself to. And he talks about like new schools, and he talks about the police force, and he talks about DPW. And you just hear like the pride that he has in it. So instead of it being like an attack campaign, he's able to really just make sure that his community knows everything that he's working so hard on for them, instead of, you know, why not vote for, you know, why you shouldn't vote for Larry. which is really good because I'm always more of a, stay on the positive side, show people the work that you're putting in, show them what you're going to continue to do. So you hear very little, you almost hear people kind of mocking the other side, like, oh my God, I think somebody put a sign up as a joke and, I haven't seen him in weeks and, people are leaving him left and right. So people are just kind of mocking it at this point. But I do believe that they are really energized to send a message that they're going to have a really strong voter turnout and just try and squash everything kind of once and for all and continue on the plan of progress that they've been on.
Without a doubt, both municipal races are probably going to be very interesting, and even the margins might be razor thin coming up to May 14th. As you can see, Amy DeGise undoubtedly is showing her support for one of the incumbents, but also for the ticket that she best feels will take West New York into a better direction for the next election cycle. We'll find out again May 14th as the votes get counted, and the debate continues in both of these hotly contested races in North Hudson municipalities. Even during the interview, we transitioned away from politics and talked about sort of real estate and development specifically in Jersey City, and quite frankly, how disparaging it is for a lot of residents that have been there for their entire lives, and now they're getting priced out because of the, quite frankly, Jersey City not being affordable. Again, as someone who lives on the South Side, Amy talked about exactly how she feels how the neighborhood is progressing, and honestly, what developers are doing to maybe price her out and other lifelong residents out of Jersey City. Not just in the downtown area, but even on the South Side and even parts of Journal Square and the Heights. Let's see what she had to say about this very highly contested issue.
How Jersey City is changing. And, again, when we see development in the downtown, it doesn't surprise anybody. When we see downtown in the Heights, we're not surprised. But when we're seeing development in the Greenville area, in the South Side of Jersey City, and let's be honest, Amy. I mean, again, I'm not trying to trigger anybody listening tonight, but there's some rough parts of the Greenville area and even the South Side, and it seems like there's an urgency, or perhaps some developers see it as the area ripe for development. But is that a good thing for the area? I mean, regardless if you're putting buildings there, if you're pricing lifelong Jersey City residents out, I mean, I don't know what that. I mean, I think I know what it does, but what do you think that does to the morale of that area of the city, or just in general overall? Like, I was just curious about your thoughts on this.
Oh, I think we can have like a 2-hour-long conversation on this topic alone because I have so many thoughts on it. I grew up in the Heights. The Heights is my home. I was pushed out because I couldn't afford the rent as a single individual. And I now live on the south side of the city, which I love. And now seeing the development there, I want to say like it started because there's, maybe foreclosed homes and abandoned homes that, were bought by people who would flip them. They saw that it gathered attention. So now they're buying the bigger lots. And I see it, walking around, the old, you remember like the Purple People factory across from Hudson Mall and 440? It had purple soil. They're developing it.
Yep.
And I'm going, oh, my God, everyone's going to have purple hands every day. They don't realize what they're living on. And they're developing. And I have the same thought because we're not really equally investing, like we just said, in our schools. Are we opening up new firehouses? Are we opening up new medical centers? Like you're going to have all of this population, but yet you're not going to have any services for them. So what's the incentive to stay? So right now, the next 5 years, next 10 years, Jersey City's still the hot city to move to. You'll sell those condos. You'll get people to rent the apartments. But after that, 5, 10 years, when people see that, the schools are overcrowded and underfunded, there's not, a firehouse close by. The medical center is downtown, and I'm on the south side of the city. There's a lot of traffic, and there's no New Jersey transit stops because the light rail is closed. What's their incentive to stay? So then you're going to see this blight, and you're going to have people leave the area again because there's no, place for them to live and work. There's no, affordability to raise their family here. So I think that we need to be really conscious with all of this development. And I think that Jersey City is in the position to make demands, to say, okay, if you're going to develop in my city, you need to offer mixed income housing, not necessarily affordable. You need to offer income-based housing. You need to provide a community center. You need to provide a medical center or, someplace that we can have medical workshops. We need an educational center. And if you can't do that, then you can't build here. We shouldn't just be leaving it out for the, real estate agents to, decide what goes there. The city should have a lot more input. And I know that they have a very active planning board, so they may be doing some of this already. I'm not speculating that they're not. But, we should need to look into some green infrastructure as well. I see some of these, when they put the plants up the walls of buildings, the living murals. To make sure that they're energy efficient. We need to have solar panels and make sure that you have, water that's not coming from the old pipes and it's not going to be a burden on our sewage system. And I think that you could bring in some developers that are kind of savvy in green initiatives and green infrastructure to also provide this. So I think that needs to be a demand. So I'm hopeful that the city are making these demands. People are no longer interested in the abatements. And I know that was a really hot topic. People don't want to be abated anymore. They want to come to Jersey City. And if you offer them an abatement, it's a tax break, but then there comes, 30% of your units have to be affordable. And they're saying, you know what, I don't want them to be affordable, so I'm not going to take the abatement, and I'll still make out, with money.
And we wrapped up our interview with some more radical views that the Democratic Party seems to be taking at the national level. And, of course, with Amy being a regular on my Talking the Hudson podcast, she had a lot to say about really what concerns her about the Democratic Party, being that she's such a moderate herself. But quite honestly, even some of the very left-wing rhetoric is starting to show some concerns for her, even as the chairwoman of the party itself. Let's hear what she had to say about not just only Senator Sanders, but other prominent Democrats taking the party way too far to the left, and honestly, how this could do the party a disservice leading into 2020 as they hopefully aim to unseat President Donald Trump. Whether or not that happens, well, I don't know, but Amy definitely has her concerns about it.
You're a reasonable Democrat. You're someone who's, yes, in the middle, but you have strong views, but you're rational, you're reasonable, you're someone that applies logic. You're a teacher like me. But when you hear this sort of rhetoric, Amy, does it concern you that this is maybe starting to now symbolize the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I can't say this to everybody. We're making the same mistake that the Republicans made in 2016. They hated Obama so much that they moved so far right in protest, and they radicalized their base. And look what we're left with. And I think if you spoke to a true Republican, someone who stood by those ideals, that they are not in agreement of what the Republican Party is doing today. But, it's kind of like, well, this is where we're at, and we're going to try and work back to the middle. The Democrats have done a similar thing here by going so left in retaliation to Donald Trump. Just kind of, you have a lot of millennials who have felt kind of away from the system and disenfranchised, that they kind of just want to uproot and start all over, all right, this didn't work, so let's go back to a blank page and change everything overnight. That is not really productive. And, I didn't get to see all of it, but I did get to see some of the commentary. And one of the pundits was talking about Bill Clinton, who I was young when Bill Clinton was the president, but I kind of remember, and I knew that my parents liked him, so it was on the TV and stuff like that. So, and the guy Clinton knew how to say something that would offend the least amount of people because he wanted to talk to everyone. And he knew in order to be successful that you kind of had to like him. So he would try and play the middle of the road as often as possible to keep his base wide. And that's a very smart thing to do. That you could have very progressive, very left values, but you need to be able to speak to all Democrats. And then, on a national level, to all people. And you can't say I'm only going to serve the people who agree with me. You're serving the people who don't agree with you as well. So I think that we're having that problem there. And, unfortunately, the way that our media works, the way that social media has taken over, most people are listening to 30-second sound bites, and most people are picking up headlines. So what do they want to read? They want to read if you said a racist comment. They want to read about if you hit on a woman and she didn't like it. They want to read about the things that bleed and that are scandalous. So I think a lot of the questions that we're asking these candidates aren't about major life-changing issues, but they make for really good talking points. And if you don't agree with their point, you're like, wow, what a jerk. Never going to look them up again. And all of a sudden you've banished a candidate from your mind because they said one thing that you disagree with. And that one thing may not even affect us on a huge scale. So the media is doing it to us, and we're doing it to ourselves. I'm a fan of Joe Biden. I always thought he was a great leader. Being a feminist, I thought that he did so much for women as he was a senator, and then as he was the vice president. Changing laws for the Violence Against Women Act, changing what campuses had to do and what were they responsible of if someone had claimed sexual assault. And then to see the reports coming out about him that, people can have their own opinions on. But who are they coming from? Democrats. Democrats were sharing these posts about him. It wasn't the Republican Party on the attack. It was us. And we can't do that. We can't fight each other because you're going to just let Trump roll right into another term because we can't build the party. We can't settle on party platforms.
So if the goal is to beat the president next November, Democrats might have to get their act together. And as you can see with Amy DeGise, she and I share the same views in terms of where the party is going. Now, again, a more moderate candidate might beat the president, but if we keep sort of pushing far-left candidates, well, the Democratic Party might be in for another long November, like they were just 4 years ago. And again, folks, if you missed any part of that podcast interview with the chairwoman of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, you can always go to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. You can do so from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. You can listen to it anywhere and anytime. Now, as we're sort of running down some local stories, folks, one that really caught my attention was from the Dean of Hudson County Journalism himself, Al Sullivan, with the Hudson Reporter and his recent Between the Lines article. And he actually referenced a very sort of interesting developments in Jersey City, specifically with Mayor Fulop and the rapport he's trying to repair with U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. Now, again, just sort of citing some quotes here. Now, according to some knowledgeable sources, the mayor of Jersey City did indeed reach out and has tried to sort of bury the political hatchet with U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. As you all know, this conflict really goes back to prior to 2014. Now, upon Mayor Fulop winning the mayoral seat in Hudson County's largest city, we all knew that he had larger aspirations for office. And one of the things that sort of maybe didn't sit well with Senator Menendez was the fact that during his trial, and certainly during a lot of the legal trials and tribulations that Bob Menendez was facing, it seemed like even behind the scenes that Mayor Fulop was trying to aim for a Senate seat. We all know the rumors are out there, and certainly, again, while most of them will agree here in Hudson County that the two of them will never really be close friends again, the idea that having this political feud out there was probably something that they should do without. And again, nice job by Al Sullivan sort of citing this in the article. And even though the mayor is looking to gear up for re-election in 2021, the idea is that, quite frankly, his bid to become governor in 2017 fell flat. Now, of course, this would be perhaps the first time that in Jersey City's history, in modern history at least, that a mayor will be actually winning 3 consecutive terms. Now, recent mayors Brett Schundler and Jerry Healy, respectively, both served 3 terms, but the first terms were actually a partial term in itself. So one of the things that Mayor Fulop, I think, the challenges that he faces in Jersey City is whether or not he can get the electorate in all sectors of the city to sort of get behind him. Now, of course, getting Bob Menendez to support his candidacy in 2021 is going to be essential. But again, some of the rumors exist that while his son Robert moved into the downtown section of Jersey City, kind of makes residents wonder, well, does the senator's son have any political aspirations, and specifically for the mayor's office in Jersey City? Well, that remains to be seen. But without a doubt, it was certainly in Mayor Fulop's best interest to be able to sort of bury the hatchet with the senator. And again, that seems to be the case. But, listen, while Mayor Fulop always seems to have his eye on higher office, we know that he has to at least focus on 2021. And whether or not he chooses to run in 2025, when subsequently and theoretically, Governor Murphy's second term could come to a close, well, we'll see if that actually happens. But in the meantime, Mayor Fulop needs to sort of focus his energies and his fundraising on 2021. Having an ally like Bob Menendez, I think, will undoubtedly help him against any challengers he may face, once again, in Hudson County's largest city. Now, some other local stories as well, folks, and one that really, I think, gets to the heart of the matter for a lot of Jersey City residents, and even Hudson County residents in general, was sort of looking at how we view a crackdown on Airbnbs and short-term rentals. Now, again, credit to Ward E Councilman James Solomon in the downtown section of Jersey City. Well, listen, let's be honest. On a given night, as many as 1,300 rentals can be available in the downtown section via Airbnbs, which ultimately does help boost the city's economy and ultimately also bolster the local tourism. But Councilman Solomon's concerned, and you know what, so am I, with the idea that, guess what, it sort of allows these services to drive up rents. And listen, we know that lifelong Jersey City residents are getting priced out of the area altogether. But the idea that even developers and even landlords are renting some of these properties out at sort of an exorbitant rate, I think concerns not only myself, but also concerns Jersey City residents. And, listen, whether or not we're going to have an ordinance passed via the city council remains to be seen, but we know that Councilman Solomon has been on top of this issue since he took office in January of 2018. Without a doubt, I think it's an issue that's going to be high on his agenda, really, for the years to come as he continues to serve downtown in Ward E. A couple of quotes here I think that Councilman Solomon really sheds light on is, quote, I think that Airbnb short-term rentals have clearly a negative impact on the downtown section, who is ultimately going to vote for the ordinance, and whether or not his council running mates will agree with him, listen, it remains to be seen. But you know what, for renters that I know come into Jersey City really on a frequent basis, and even for local tourists, the idea of having affordable Airbnbs and even any sort of short-term rental, I think is imperative to the region's economy and ultimately to the downtown area, which is, quite honestly, folks, and listen, I don't want to trigger anybody tonight, but the most attractive section of Jersey City. It's the most restaurants, certainly a lot of nightlife destinations are there as well. And to say that, listen, without other aspects of Jersey City not being attractive, well, I don't want to say that tonight. But what I will tell you is that kudos to Councilman Solomon for really taking the initiative on this, and let's hope that his fellow council running mates will be able to at least agree with him on this specific measure. And we'll see how the ordinance proceeds on the council agenda, really in the meetings in the months and weeks ahead. Well, folks, again, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Hudson Media Group. If you are ever interested in checking out the excellent program from the Hudson Media Group, check out www.hmgtvshows.com. You can also check it out on live stream at www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Check out my podcast on a regular basis. Go to www.blogtalkradio.com/TalkinTheHudson. Of course, follow the show on Instagram and Twitter, and also check it out on Facebook. Folks, if it's talking politics, you know it's right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Professor Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for joining us.